Hello and welcome to the Leadership Lounge. It's great to have you here with us again. I'm Colin Tapscott, and today we're going to be talking about something that every leader wants more of, which is engagement. Most leaders say that they want engaged teams, but very few stop to really explore and answer the questions. What actually creates engagement? You see, it's not about pizza Fridays, it's not about surveys, it's not about motivational posters. Engagement's something much more human. So I'm here today with Anna Hennell-James. Welcome again, Anna.
Hello, thank you for having me. Lovely to be here again.
Yes, it's great to explore this with you. So welcome, Anna. So we're going to be exploring engagements, the topic of the Leadership Lounge, and many organisations measure engagement by surveys, how engaged the people, but leaders still struggle to create engagement. So why do you think engagement remains such a challenge for leaders?
I think fundamentally because it's quite hard work, because it is, as you said in the introduction, it's a human factor. It's not just something you'd have on a list and go, yes, we're doing
Yeah,
engagement today.
yeah,
So it takes effort and hard work, and you need to be consistent. It's not a one-off thing, and suddenly everybody is engaged and will continue to be engaged.
yeah, yeah,
So you're working hard at it. You've got to be consistent with it.
yeah,
And it's not a one-size-fits-all model. There isn't something you can take off the shelf and go, oh, if I do this, everybody will become engaged. There are things you can do that will support it, but you've got to mold what you do to the people with whom you're working.
yeah. And we can explore some of those things that you do that are tailored for them, and some sort of general principles that will kind of sit underneath that. So what's the real cost to an organisation then when people are disengaged?
Underperformance, low productivity, and basically good people will leave.
Yeah,
If they're not engaged, they'll vote with their feet.
yeah. So it's really key.
Yeah, you've got to get it right.
Hence, hopefully, why people are tuning into this podcast, it's really key that
Yeah,
people get it right, and we hope to explore some of that
yeah,
today.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to sort of start, Colin, by asking you about what you think causes that disengagement. And I know that you're a fan of Patrick Lencioni's work, some brilliant books and podcasts he does. So how does his work on that explain disengagement?
Yeah, so she's I'm a bit of a fan of Patrick Lencioni and a whole series of books, but one in particular, which is The Truth About Employee Engagement. So it's exactly what it says on the tin. And he, interestingly, talks about disengagement, the things that cause disengagement. And he says the first one is anonymity. The second one is irrelevance. And the third one, he's sort of got a made up word of immeasurement. Okay. And so effectively, what he's saying is if people feel anonymous, if they feel not known by the boss, that is one thing that will cause them to disengage. If they feel irrelevant, in other words, they don't know what they're bringing to the organization, if they can't see what they're bringing is doing, how it supports the role of what the organization is doing, they can't see the relevance of it, that will cause them to disengage. And the third one, immeasurement, which I'm sure I think is a made up word, it certainly gives you a bit of a spelling squiggle when you type it out, is all about when people don't know when they've been successful. In other words, they can't measure how successful they are being, then that also disengages them. Because there's a sense with people, you want to know that what you're delivering is making a difference. And when you get that sort of feedback loop, then you get the joy kind of within you. So those are the three things that Patrick Lencioni says will cause that disengagement.
Yeah. And I know you've reframed those ideas into the three I's of engagement,
Yes.
which is what we're after. So can you talk us through that model and how
Yeah,
it
I
works?
can. I mean, as you know, I love a bit of alliteration. So if I can get them to stick to three letters the same, then I think it helps us remember. And also, I love Lencioni's work, but he talks about what disengages. I think to kind of really get us thinking, we want to avoid that. But the three I's of engagement, the first is identity, that our identity is known by the boss. So you can see they directly correlate to Lencioni's work. The second is influence. You know how your work fits the purpose of the organization, you know the influence that you are having within it. And the third is impact, that you know that you are having impact. So identity, they feel known by the boss. influence, that you know how your work is influencing and fits within the organization and is making a difference. And third one is impact. You know when and how it is really making a difference to the people at the end of what you're doing. So if you're a school, you know that you know what you're doing is really helping the children or the community. If you are a business, that you know the little bit that you're doing makes a difference. So even if you are like the cleaner, you know that when I keep this place clean, it creates a great environment for our guests coming in. Therefore, I know what I do makes a difference and has, and particularly if the boss is feeding back, you know what, when you keep this place clean, this is the difference
Yeah.
that it makes as part of that.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Yeah. So Anna, let's unpick those a little. Let's start with that first I of identity. Why is it so important that people feel known by the boss? I mean, I think it is. Lencioni thinks, you know, that like the opposite. So there's two great people, and I know from our conversations you think the same. So why is it important that people feel known by their boss?
Because they are people, not cogs.
Yes.
So this is around that feeling of belonging. So although people might work within an organization, they are part of a team, which is like, you know, if you like, their tribe. And the boss is the leader. So you want to know that you matter to that person, and that they know who you are. And I suppose to a certain extent that they care about you. So it feels like a reciprocal relationship. So, you know, I am coming in here every day to do my work, to work my socks off, to try and deliver on what you've asked me to do. And in return, I want to know that you know who I am. And you know that I'm doing that. And you know me as a person, not just as the team, because the team itself is not a thing. It's made up of all the individuals within it. And so that boss needs to know those individuals in order for them to feel they've got that reciprocal relationship in terms of, I'm trying hard, I'm working really hard, and this is what you do for me in return.
Yeah. And what we're talking about here is this innate value in human beings, isn't it? To know that I have value to somebody. I often talk in my coaching work with people, it's a core part of human nature is kind of to feel known and to feel that you belong, which is exactly what you're describing there, belong to this tribe and the leader of the tribe, and I have value from within them. So it's a core part. And you just talking there, I can think of a moment where just one example, when I was a head teacher and one of my cleaners was chatting to me at the end of the day, he did like a bit of a lean on a broom if he had the chance. And his name was Steve, and I remember him chatting to me about his son and a challenge his son was going through. And several days later, I went back to him and say, Steve, how's your son doing? You know, this is what we mean when we're talking about known, isn't it? It isn't just about them; it's about their personal circumstances. And just that little example there is showing that we have listened to them as well.
And listened and cared enough to remember
Yeah.
and come back to.
Yeah. I heard someone else say the other day as well, where a really good way of doing it is, even if you're just sending it in a message, I was thinking about you the other day. That again just helps them realize. And then if you add a specific that you have been, that they told you about, I was thinking about you the other day and you were saying about your sore knee. How's that knee doing? And that's a double whammy,
And
isn't it?
the importance of that is the individualism, if that's the word, of that, not just something that's banged out to the whole team.
Yeah.
We're all meant to be able to take something personal
Yeah.
from a message that's been delivered to a whole group. And some teams can be enormous. So it's
Yeah.
you know, where is the relevance to you if it's just something that's been pushed out to everybody?
Yeah. And it's interesting you're saying that. I often use the phrase with people, it's a very old program that many people wouldn't have heard of, but people of our generation will have heard of Are You Being Served?
Yeah.
And the boss there was Mr. Grace, who was like in his 90s, and he would be wheeled out every now and again, stand on the steps and just sort of croak in this elderly, well done, everybody. And that was his way of like encouraging them. Well, it just meant nothing because it wasn't specific praise either, was it?
No.
And it also wasn't to a person.
No.
They didn't know what the well
And
done.
well done for what?
Yeah, well done for what is. So we've covered a couple of things, but are there other simple ways that leaders can ensure people feel recognized and understood as individuals?
I think it is that communication through and through. So it is, as we've said, it's about recognizing them as an individual and treating them as such within the team. And it's that remembering things about them and knowing them and caring enough to follow up on things with them.
Yeah,
And it's also about making clear to everybody that you need everyone in the team to do what they do in order to achieve the shared goals. So it's clarity
yeah,
around what you're trying to achieve as well. And I think as well, it's about within that communication, remembering to thank people. It's very easy, I suppose, to get into the mindset of, well, they should be turning up and doing X, Y, and Z because I'm paying them to do a job.
yeah,
But that's losing that human connection. And I had a lovely example of that a couple of weeks ago, when I saw actually one of my children is a teacher, is on the leadership of a large department, and the head of the department was on paternity leave, and the next person in the department was off sick. So it fell to her to sort things out. No supply for love nor money, so covering things, and she's emailing out to people going, if you can cover this, I'll do that, whatever. And at the end of the week, she had a lovely email from the deputy head to say, thank you for taking it on. The department ran as smoothly as it ever does,
yeah,
and I really appreciate that you went above and beyond to sort things out. So she knows that she's been seen
yeah,
and that the work she's done has been appreciated. And the message has come through to her personally. It wasn't just a public, well, rah rah for that department, didn't they do well? It was specific to her
yeah.
and recognise what she's done. And that kind of communication goes a long way when times are tough for people digging deep and going the extra mile for you.
Which and that example as well does blend nicely into that second eye as well, doesn't it?
It does, because it's about your influence, isn't it, Colin? It's like, making sure people understand how their work connects with the wider
Yes,
organisation
and that
or
impact.
other teams. So what do you think leaders can do to help people make that connection?
Yeah, so there's we're going to move on from I's to the letter M here because there's some stuff I talk about with people in the training around that. They're just little things, drip by drip stuff. You were saying this earlier. You can't just say something once. It has to be regularly reminded and focused on. Drip. I call it drip, drip, drip by the dripping tap. Like you don't just do a torrent and think that's it. Like running your kind of water in the bath. You have to drip, drip, drip. Anyway, the M's are a couple. So the first one is to do Miranda moments, and Miranda moments, as I call them, are based on the TV program Miranda, when she would turn and sort of turn to the audience and talk to them and explain either her feelings or her thoughts that were going on. So when we do that, when we turn and explain, I really love the way you did that, when you spoke to the customer or whatever. I really love when you did that, because and so you're explaining, or you can do the same when you're doing something as well. You turn in to explain to someone, did you notice the impact of when that happened? So we help people see the impact of behaviors when we kind of turn and explain, or we explain the impact. Did you notice how the customer walked away after you spoke to them? Oh yeah, they were looking really smiley. That was because you did this and this. So that turning and explaining,
Yeah.
I think, is really key. The other M is meerkat moments. So praising what you want to see. So meerkats, if they hear a noise, they perk up and look in that direction. So it's the same with us. If we praise what we want to see, then people will turn towards that. So when you see an individual doing something well and how it has impact on the work that you're doing, then you praise it because you're praising what you want to see. So I think if we were to take it away from the M's of meerkat moment and Miranda moments, it's just the explaining and the praising, that gives people the focus, and then they understand, so when I do this is how it helps the organization that we're on.
And what's the impact then, Colin, when leaders forget, underestimate, how much people need to know the why behind the decisions that are being made and the processes that
Yeah,
are in
so I think
place.
if we want people to be engaged in the kind of direction of where we're going, people need to understand the why. If you don't explain that we're doing this as an organization because, if you don't do that, what happens is stuff just feels very mechanical and almost transactional because we're not helping people to understand why we're doing things, how their role fits within it, and we're just treating people, like you said earlier, like a cog. So it becomes very mechanical as part of it. And people need this sense of purpose if they're doing their work, because that will energize them. And hearing about how their impact happens, it fuels them. So if you're not giving them the information about the impact they're having when you're doing this is the difference it makes, they're not hearing, oh, good, so my
Yeah,
purpose is being worked out. They're not getting that feedback loop. So then they will feel flatter and then they'll start to feel disengaged.
yeah,
And so without that, they'll start to switch off. And some extreme cases, what you find is people will then start to create their own purpose and their own
yeah,
sort of driver within the
yeah,
organization,
yeah,
and which some might call mischief. Because they're not realizing the impact they're having and they're feeling disengaged. So they look for something that will give
yeah,
them some sense of
yeah,
engagement or feedback.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's why I think it's important because people then just feel like a cog.
yeah.
Yeah, as part of that process. So our third I, Anna, is impact, people knowing when they've been successful. How can leaders create that better feedback loop so people understand the difference they're making? We touched on some of the reasons if you don't, but how do they go about that?
I think the obvious one is just tell them. It's amazing how many times leaders forget to actually give any feedback or anything that's any more than a cursory, blanket coverage. You need to tell people,
Mm,
and that needs to be regular. So I would say it's around having, a team meeting where you update on progress and achievement to date and what's still left to do, as well as individual recognition. And all of that is easier if at the very outset you have real clarity on goals and expectations,
mm,
targets, whatever that you can refer back to.
yeah,
If you haven't done that at the beginning, you could, I don't know, you could potentially, say to a team, oh, well done, everybody. We've managed a 2% increase on production. And we might go, well, hurrah us. But actually, if at the outset your target was 30%,
yeah,
we're not quite at the hurrah stage yet, are we? So
yeah,
if you make it really clear for people what it is you're working towards, what the end goal is, what you're expecting to achieve, then when you are giving feedback which is specific in relation to those goals and targets,
yeah,
people have a sense of how it's going.
yeah,
And if you do have to walk in and go, our target was 30%, we've managed 2%,
yeah,
then people will be expecting that discussion of, right, okay, what are we going to do to improve it? Because that's clearly not enough. Whereas if they
yeah,
didn't know at the outset it was 30%, 2% is an improvement, I'll take that. Yeah,
yeah.
thanks very much, job done.
And I'm just hearing you say this. This fits in really well with the four disciplines of execution. And two of the four disciplines, one is a cadence of accountability, so a regular rhythm of holding to account. And that holding to account isn't just waggy waggy of holding to account, it's just saying, where are we at? And then one of the others is keeping an accurate scoreboard. And in some cases, that's literally, let's have a scoreboard. But it's still keeping that regular rhythm, just like you said, our aim was 30, we we're on two. Or, obviously you can then celebrate if our aim was two and we're on 30.
Yeah.
So that's really important as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I mean, this, everything we're talking about really is all hinged around communication, isn't it? And I know in your training, you emphasize a couple of Stephen Covey's habits from his 7 habits of highly effective people. So can you explain to us which ones fit this and how that works?
Yeah, so Stephen Covey's Seven Habits is actually a really old book now. I think
Yeah.
it's like 30th anniversary or maybe even be longer.
I think
But
it's older than that.
yeah, but actually some really good simple stuff. I mean, the book is quite thick and dense, but some really good simple stuff. And two of them that I think are really important here. The first one is actually habit number 5, and the second one I'm going to mention is actually habit number 4. So I'm going to mention them in reverse order because the first one is listen to understand. So if we are going to really engage people, we need to listen to understand them. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. Listen to understand them in order to then speak to them, to engage them. And the other one is look for the win-win. So if we're working with people and there's a problem that's coming up and we want to engage them still in the direction we want to go in, it is about listening to understand them, but then look for what will work for both them and us in order to get there. So I think those two are really key if we're going to look at kind of communicating elements, particularly when perhaps we're hitting some challenge and we still want to engage them.
And can you unpick for us what it means to truly listen to understand rather than listen to respond? And as somebody who frequently jumps in before people have finished what they're saying, it's hard. It is hard.
Yeah. So listen to understand is key, and you've just hit the key thing. A lot of the time when we are in conversation with someone, so maybe we've said to them, hey, I'd really like us to do this, and someone's coming back and say, yes, but Colin, there's this and this problem, and we're inside thinking, yeah, but I need you to get engaged with this because we need to improve this situation. And so what ends up happening is you listen to reply or respond rather than really understand the issue, because you want to sort of win your points to get them to do what you want them to do. Listening to understand is really thinking, what is their position? What can I really understand what their issue is? And this is where it overlaps a little with look for the win-win as well, because when we understand their position, what we're looking for, and those who are watching on screen, I'm just making the slide of like the Venn diagram with the overlap and the intersection in the middle. We're looking for the intersection. We're looking for where we've got overlap in our ideas or an issue, because then that's the position that we build from. So when we're listening to understand, we're looking for what is their actual position. And my advice to you when you're listening is to think, I need to summarize back to them what I hear as the 1, 2, or 3 key points that they're trying to make. And so I have a little script that I quite often use that I share with people in training and coaching as well, which is, if I've understood this correctly, the issue you're talking about is X, Y, and Z. And obviously for X, Y, and Z, you substitute the 3 issues that you think they've heard. Now, the benefit of that is they'll give you one of 3 answers. They'll either say, yes, that's it. Those are the 3 issues that are the problem here. And what that does is 2 things. A, they feel listened to. You are really listening to me because I've heard back. You've understood my key points. It's also beneficial to us because we now really understand the key issue, and now I can address this with the person. I can look for the Venn diagram intersection overlap. I can look for where our ideas might merge, but I can also think, is there anything new this is teaching me? What was I right in the first place? Or actually, have I got some things wrong? Where do I need to adjust and where do I need to work from? They might also say, yes, it is that, and it's also this. Now, again, they still feel heard because I've got most of it. I now have even more clarity because I've found out the thing that perhaps I've missed that's also important to them. And again, I can then look to see how I will address this moving forward. And that way I will get engagement because I'm looking for the intersection. The third answer they can give when I summarize back to them, paraphrase back to them, is no, that's not it. That's not the issue. Those are issues, but the core issue is this. Now, again, I understand what the issue is now. They now feel listened to because they've been able to tell me what the issue is. And perhaps don't feel as listened to as earlier because I haven't quite caught hold of the key point. But I'm then able to follow that up and go, okay. So what you're saying is those are issues, but the main issue for you is this one. And they go, yes, that's the big issue for me. Again, same principle. I can then look for that Venn diagram intersection, look where the overlap is as part of that process. So that's what the listening to understand allows us to do. And we can build from that. And that then allows us with that other one to look for the win-win, because what I'm looking for is, well, what's the issue for them? What's the issue for me? Where's the overlap? Build from the intersection. Now, if I think that person is actually wrong, or is there's coming things even affecting their judgment, or they've lost sight of some things that I've got sight of, I still start from where we've got the intersection. So I might then say, look, it's great that you've mentioned this and this. I totally agree with you. We need to build from that. And then what you do is you build them back to some ideas. I'd like to build on this part of your idea to take to this, if you still think you're right. Or you might have heard something that's allowed you to say, that's a really good point. I need to kind of work on that and explore that further as part of that process. The other bit you can do, linking to this, is say, okay, I hear all of this, but this is also my issue. And interestingly, I just use a really incorrect word there. I've used the word but, because if I say but, it then negates what I've just said. So where we can, we need to use the word and. That's a really good bit of here that you've, the X, Y, and Z that you've explained to me. And I've also got this issue. So we're not negating what we've just said.
Yeah.
And then that allows us to explore with them. So the other bit that we can then do is say to them, look, we've got this issue and we've got this issue. What's the win-win for us here? Because ultimately, this is where we need to get to. So when we ask them, what would a win look like for you that could also be a win for me? So we work in collaboration with them as part of that process. So that's where the listening to understand builds into the win-win, and listening to understand, we're just trying to understand what are their one, two key or three key points. And the key kind of script, if you like, is if I've understood this correctly, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then just trying that will enable them to feel heard and you to get clarity. And then you can build from there.
Rather than jumping in partway through or just batting back with
Yeah.
your view.
Yeah.
That's
Because then we disengage them.
Yeah.
Because then it's not, oh, my opinion doesn't count.
count.
You might ask me, how my son was, but actually he doesn't care about my opinion, or he doesn't actually really care about the issues on the shop floor that are causing us problems.
Yeah. That's really helping to synthesize down what it is that leaders need to be doing, Colin.
Yeah.
And I know in some of your training you've described a simple framework to communicate the what, the why, and the impacts. So can you talk about that and how that helps leaders really connect people into that purpose?
Yeah. Because quite often when people ask, they'll just ask them the what. Please, could you do this, whatever it might be. When we ask people to do a what, that's not particularly engaging. People buy into a why rather than a what. They can't explain a why if you ask them. If you said, why did you do that? They can't explain it, but they like to hear a why because that will engage them. So when we're asking somebody to do something, rather than say, could you please come in at 9 a.m. rather than 10 a.m.? I know your shift starts at 10, but can you come in at 9? That isn't going to engage them. So that's just a what. But if we were to add the why and the impact, could I ask you please to come in at 9 a.m. because we've got this great new event that means there's going to be a few more people arriving earlier. So I need the room set up earlier than normal. This event actually is bringing in local business people that are going to see the work we're doing and actually going to hopefully invest. So actually, this is the impact by us getting everything ready. We should have a lot more investors in our new project, and more investors means we've got better turnover, which will bring us so much more benefit as an organization. So the what was, can you come in early? The why was because these people are coming in earlier because it's this big event. And the impact is then by us all being ready, how the people will come into that. If you can do an impact that really makes a difference to them, then that's even better. But by having those 3 steps, we're more likely to get that engagement, particularly around the why. But most leaders just stop at the one. They just talk about the task, but don't look at the purpose.
Don't take it any further.
Yeah, and they don't then bring it in with that's got something that's meaningful.
And in your example, yes, being asked, can you come in at 9 instead of 10, doesn't inspire you to do it and take it on board, does it?
Yeah.
So there's the bit is missing from that needs to be followed.
That simple example, actually, if we go back to the last question as well, if we want engagement in this, if they were to come back to say, look, I'm really sorry I can't get in at 9 because I've got to drop my kids off at school, which is why I have a 10 o'clock start. Now you go back to, well, let's look at the win-win. You go, I really hear that. From what you're telling me, you've got to be around to drop your children off. We've got this issue. So how can we work together to ensure that you can still drop your children off, but I know it's all still ready? You got any ideas how we could do this? And then they might say, well, actually, I could work a little bit later the night before and get that and that set up. I could certainly get here for 9:30, and then I could finish that last little bit. Does that work for you? And I go, yeah, that's great.
Great.
So that's
Yeah.
how those two
Yeah.
bits really then tie that back together.
Yeah.
So
That's really helpful.
yeah,
And you also shared a communication model from Steve Adams, Five Prompts to Persuasive Power.
yeah.
What's the idea behind that approach, and how does that fit in with what we've talked about so far?
Yeah, so Steve Adams, great guy, written a book which is all about the 5 prompts. And what he talks about is it goes to the center brain. So our brain has our emotional center. So if you're watching this on screen, you've got seen me do a fist, which is like the shape of our brain, and the bit right in the center, our amygdala, which is where all our emotional connection is. And Steve worked for years working in kind of advertising, and he's pulled out the key strand that advertisers use to connect to that emotional center brain of ours. We tend to think, certainly I think, I'm a logical thinker, but unbeknown to me, we all engage in the emotional brain, even if we think we're quite logical. So he talks about 5 things that advertisers use. You might have seen these also being used in like charities doing adverts on telly. These 5 things get people engaged. And so he says the first one is to present things as an idea. So rather than tell someone you've got to do it, present it as an idea. Now, for some things, we might not be able to present it idea. It might be a 3-line whip that needs to happen. So yeah, for goodness sake, then don't present it as an idea. And when they say, no, I don't fancy that, then go, well, I'm sorry, you have
You have
to.
to, yeah.
I will completely disengage them because you're messing with them. So if it can be kind of bought into as an idea, if it can be ran as a trial first, present it as an idea. I wonder if we were to try X. That's the first thing. The second thing we've covered already, which is the why. Give the reason why, not just the what. So explaining kind of why you want this to happen in order to do so. Then the third one is contrast. And so he says, present what's currently happening with what the new idea will present. Now, we tend to think when we're producing an idea that people know what's currently happening, so we'll just tell them the new idea, which is true. They do know what's happening. But what the contrast does is it speeds up engagement because you're saying, here's what we currently do, but this is what it could look like. And this is what will happen in this new way of doing things. So let's just take those 3 in a kind of example. If you worked in an education setting, you might say to someone, look, I wonder if we could try this new format for our planning. And normally when you tell teachers that it's like a big, no, I've got used to all of this. It's going to cause me more hassle. So this one really, you want engagement, but you are fighting a bit. Then explain the reason why. It could, and your reason could be we've got to account for these new things, actually, or more importantly, for what you like to get engagement is where once they've got used to the new system, how it will speed up time. Actually, if we use this new online format, it automatically pulls through some planning criteria from your previous grids. That's going to save you time. Now, they might be interested in that. Why? Because it saves you time. Then you present the contrast. This is the form we currently do. This is how long it takes. This is where we need to then copy it from there to there into here. However, this new one pulls it through automatically from the documents we've got online, saving you the time of wasteful copying stuff that you've already written down. So by presenting that contrast already, they're now starting to be interested. The fourth one is to pictorialize. So this is about telling a story of what it could be like. So imagine sitting down and you getting, instead of you putting out the planning sheet and having to copy across all these things, now you just click on this link. It's already pulled through those core objectives from your previous set of planning, and all you're doing is writing down the activities. And the fifth one, so that was the pictorialized, telling the story. The fifth one is emotional, explaining the difference it's going to make. Imagine how you would feel having saved an hour every night on your planning sheets. Yeah. And so weaving those 5 in. So that's just an education example. If you're working in a business context, it might be about having a new way of greeting customers when they arrive, would be your idea. The reason why is because you want it to be a smoother and happier operation for the customer, but also make it a little bit easier for us because we then won't have to, and then you explain what the difference will be.
Yeah.
And then the contrast, this is what we currently do when customers come in. This is what the new thing would look like. So now they can see the contrast, they can see the difference. and then you pictorialize again, tell the story about the customer arriving, and they're so much happier now. There's less complaints. Imagine how you're going to feel with less complaints because they're not looking for this particular thing as they arrive. So your life will be happier, and this is where you bring in the emotional connection again, because we will reduce the customer complaints probably by 3/4, because most of our customer complaints are because they can't find X or Y when they arrive. So those 5 will mean you're more likely to engage people because, again, there's emotional connection. So yeah, I recommend to listeners kind of getting hold of Steve's book.
Sounds good.
Yeah, The Centre Brain: 5 Prompts to Persuasive Power. So, Anna, we're going to move to our last section now, which is around that kind of application. We've covered a number of bits, but what are the warning signs then, do you think, that a team might already be disengaged and therefore you need to implement some of the things that we've talked about?
Yeah, I think when you find yourself in a situation where no one is accepting responsibility for shared outcomes, so something was due to be finished, it hasn't been, and you're trying to unpick it, and everybody's nothing to do with me, blaming somebody. I did my bit, don't know what happened after that. So
Yeah,
there is none of that going, oh my goodness, we missed the deadline, we didn't get this, what happened. People
yeah,
are just stepping back and distancing themselves from it, and nobody is prepared to say, actually, it's because this didn't happen or I didn't do this. So if you've got everybody sidestepping shared outcomes, I think you've already sort of moved into the
yeah.
danger zone.
I'm listening to you saying that, and that beautifully links to some of Patrick Lencioni's other work, where his core piece actually about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And one of the dysfunctions is lack of shared accountability. And you're not prepared to help each other and hold each other to account. And also, kind of part of that is looking after each other when it's not working. Yeah.
And then I think as well, when you have people who are doing the bare minimum, so they are turning up every day and they are doing something,
Yeah.
but they are not working towards those shared goals particularly, or they're not working as hard as they could.
Yeah.
Or I've also seen cases where people come in, but they're actually doing their own thing. So I know you asked me to do that, but actually, I've decided getting this done is more important because I
Yeah.
need to do this for whatever reason. And then I might think about the shared team
That links to
efforts
what
and
we were talking
things.
about earlier about finding their own
Find
purpose
their own
and their own
purpose, yeah.
interests. Yeah.
Yeah, and filling their own time with
Yeah.
what they've decided to
Yeah.
prioritize because they are not at all engaged in whatever the goal or outcome you are trying to achieve is.
Yeah. And the first one you mentioned actually is like a passive resignation, isn't it? In terms of, I'm not really into this, so I'll just do the
Just
enough.
yeah,
Yeah. And so
just
they have almost
go.
disengaged from the whole process, but
Yeah.
they're probably pretty conscientious people because they don't want to completely switch off, but they've
Yeah,
disengaged
so
from it,
they're,
so
they're
they
still
just do
kind
the
of
minimum.
turning up. But then I think another warning sign is when people stop turning up. And by that, I mean when you start getting high rates of absence
Yes.
for a whole variety of, whatever reasons people give. And yes,
Yeah.
sometimes people will have genuine reasons for being absent. But if people are engaged in what's going on,
Yeah.
then I think they think twice before taking some time off, some
Yeah.
unplanned time
Yeah.
off, because they'll be thinking, oh, blimey, that will mess up so and so. And if I'm not in today to get that done, then this can't happen, because they can see the bigger picture, because you've explained to them
Yeah.
the what and the why and the impact. So when that is missing, people don't feel the need to, and I'm not saying you should drag yourself in if you're not well, but if it's a bit of a should I, shouldn't I, should I go in and see how I get on?
Yeah.
People are more likely to do that if they
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
the why and the impact as well as the
Yeah.
what of what they've been tasked to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. So those are the signs for people to look out
Yeah,
for.
watch out
And
for.
if they see those signs, it's about
Yeah.
doing some of the natural things that we've talked about, that drip, drip, drip. It's about those little conversations, getting to know each other, but also about communicating in a way that's more
Yeah.
likely to engage people. So as we draw our podcast to a close, we all normally finish with our top tips. So if we were to filter all of this down for everybody, what would our top tips being?
I would say number one, recognize team members as individuals. The team is a thing,
Yeah.
but it's not a thing that exists in its own right. It only exists because it's made up of all those individuals.
Yeah.
So recognize them as individuals and don't forget that they are individuals.
Yeah.
Number two, I would say know those individual members of your team and let them know you without oversharing. But there are ways to communicate and be open
Yeah.
with people so that they know you are a real person and that you are as much a part of that team as they are.
Yeah.
You're not distanced from it.
Yeah.
And number three, I think, comes back to the whole thing that's kind of threaded through all of this. It's around clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity of purpose, clarity of goals, clarity within your communication, clarity around your expectations. If people are clear
Yeah.
on what it is they've got to do, why they're doing it, what the impact will be, and when it's got to be done by, then they know what they're supposed to be cracking on with. If it's all a bit vague, people don't know, and then it's hard to engage.
Yeah.
Because it all feels a bit slippery.
Yeah.
And tenuous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Brilliant.
what about you, Colin?
So I agree with all of those. I think the key again is just around how we communicate. So I think the two parts, in what we're saying, which builds a bit on your clarity stuff, to do that's that simple thing of the what, why, impact.
Yeah.
If you can't remember some of the others, like the 5 prompts or anything,
Yeah.
just remember what, why, and impact.
Yeah.
Because that's more likely to get people engaged. And then the key one as well is that listen to understand and looking for that win-win. So if we've explained something to somebody and they are saying, actually, there's a problem here, then we don't just try and brush that off because we want them engaged in our idea. Listen to understand what the issue is. Summarize that back so that you can find what the issue is and they feel listened to. Because even if you do go back to your idea, if they feel that their issue has been listened
It's
to,
been listened to and
yeah,
heard.
yeah,
It wasn't dismissed out of
wasn't
hand.
dismissed, chances are they will still come with you on your idea because you at least listened to me. Ideally, you want to find those points of intersection and build so they can see their part in that. But yeah, just summarize back, listen to understand. And if there is a real issue, look for the win-win.
Yeah.
Because if you might get away with it once saying, no, I'm sorry, we're going to do it this way. But if you keep doing, no, I'm sorry, we do it my way. No, I'm sorry, we do it my way. And eventually you don't even have the no and the sorry, you just have, we're doing it my way. That's again when you'll get people disengaged. So I think if you can look for the win-win where you hit obstacles, again, you're more likely to get people buying in. So, yeah, good. Well, Anna, thank you for joining me on this and exploring engagement. Always a joy to work with you. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us on the Leadership Lounge. It's been great to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing you in our next Leadership Lounge.